Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have, once again, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, Trevor?
What is going on? Today we're going to be talking about Jedi Fallen Order, which Cameron has been playing for the first time. I've been playing Theatrhythm Final Bar Line, the new Final Fantasy music game. And we also just finished watching the David episode of The Last of Us, so we will share our thoughts on that, fresh off the HBO Max. Before we hop into that, a little bit of housekeeping. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. And speaking of housekeeping, Cameron, you're playing Jedi Fallen Order. Tell us why.
I'll tell you why. Because it's time for the That Nerdy Site Soulsborne aficionado to finally take a swing at getting into the Star Wars Soulsborne game. Jedi Survivor's coming out in a few months. This has been a game that I have really been putting off for a very, very long time. Which is like for somebody who's as big of a Star Wars fan as me, and also enjoys Soulsborne games.
Soulsborne fan, yeah.
This was should have been like a no-brainer for me. That I would have hopped into it, but there was at the time there was budgetary reasons. There was
I feel like the reason you always gave at least was Cal Kestis is a boring character. You don't want to play as Cal Kestis.
That's yeah. I was about to get to that. The reason I didn't initially pick it up was oh, I don't have the money at the time. And then from what I gathered from I read from a number of people talking about the choice of Cal Kestis as a main character in a Star Wars game. And this was also during this was not too long after the Amy Hennig studio game was shut down. There had been a lot of misses from Star Wars as far as the franchise at that point. And I was also just kind of burnt out on Star Wars at that time. I was just kind of hey, you know what? I would rather wait for something that, maybe have a little bit more excitement about. And over time, I think that this game has just kind of always been on my periphery. And so it's just time for me to hop in. And I thought, what better way to hop in and play this game than to do a Let's Play series about it? That's right.
There you go.
That Nerdy Site plays Jafo.
Jafo, yes.
Jafo.
Star Wars Jafo.
Jafo.
Swidjafo.
Swidjafo.
Yes. The first episode of which is live now. Basically, we're putting it live alongside this episode. So once you're done here, feel free to go check that out. Go check out Cameron's initial episode of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. His kind of introductory thoughts on the game. I know in our timeline and kind of what we'll be discussing today, you've recorded a few other episodes.
Yes.
So there will be more coming. But yeah, what are your preliminary thoughts here of Swidjafo?
Swidjafo is it's fun. I think that's the most important thing, is that it nails kind of the fun aspects of what you want out of a game where you can kind of swing a lightsaber around and do stuff. I think that going a more slower action route was a good choice when you're so the idea of doing a Soulsborne game is that a deep part of that combat is based on input meaning something. So when you swing the sword, there's a weight to it. And I was really curious how they would incorporate that level of commitment that goes into your actions. And what that means, and what that might entail as far as lightsabers they're made of light, obviously, it's in their name. They're plasma swords. There's not what does it mean for there to be weight to those swings? And they take a really interesting perspective on it, because it's not that you commit with the weight of the thing you're swinging. It's the commitment of the weight of the character themselves. Cal is a very light character as far as his movement and his ability. And so for the commitment that you have to make on your swings is because Cal puts a lot of momentum behind his movements. And it's an odd balance that I think for the most part they kind of nail. that's really really good. I think that there's a couple of things that, as far as like design choices, I'm not the biggest fan of when it comes to like the dodge mechanic in the game. The dodge and dodge roll mechanic I feel is um, it doesn't feel as good as I think I'd like it to feel. Granted, like I've also been binging and playing a metric shit ton of Elden Ring.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're playing a game that came out 2-3 years after Jedi Fallen Order,
Mm-hmm.
in it from the the dominant force in the series.
Yeah,
So
so
Respawn taking this first stab at it.
not bad at all. I think when it comes to the combat and the mechanics of what they're doing, it's great. I think that there is a soft lock mechanic on the abilities that you unlock. You don't get a full like breadth of things you can be investing your skill points into. So eventually at some point as I'm trying to get better at this combat, I had like by the time I unlocked the next level of it, I literally had just like I splurged and bought like half the abilities.
Hmm.
I think that says a lot that I've been wanting to put more time in to get better at the combat. I think that one of the best things that they do is they really make you feel like a Jedi when you're deflecting blaster bolts.
Yeah.
The feeling of like a quick guard to blaster bolt, like send the blaster bolt back to somebody who just fired it at you, is such a great way of also breaking up your combat rhythm in when you're dealing with melee focused characters. And I like they actually make Durasteel the kind of plate plastic that stormtroopers wear. Those actually do something for stormtroopers, which is fantastic because most of the time Star Wars loves to ignore that these guys all are wearing like heavy armor. So it's great. I've really enjoyed that. I like I've encountered a couple different varieties of enemies. I think that the idea of making fauna and like the local plant and animal life more dangerous than actual stormtroopers is good. It makes fighting a group of stormtroopers feel realistic, like a Jedi could take those on. But there is something about the natural world of the places that you're on that they can like those creatures can fuck you up.
Mm.
And I feel that fits within like kind of the Star Wars universe of nature being very, very powerful as an antagonistic force if you fuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that falls in lines with kind of like the identity and ideals of Star Wars. So far, Cal has been largely uninspiring. BD1 is an absolute joy. BD1 is so good. He is my little buddy. He does fun things for me. I will say that the customization options, as far as like, one of my favorite things, if you ever watch any of our Elden Ring Let's Plays, is I love coming in cosplay. And I love coming in outfits and like cool, fun outfits that I have on like my super character. Like I like that. That's something I enjoy doing. The poncho being the only real customizable feature for Cal doesn't really do much, except I appreciate that it's not just color palette swaps. There's actual like texture on the ponchos that he wears. So like one of the ponchos I really liked, I didn't like that it had more of a water resistant texture to it.
I wonder if this is a PS5 thing, because I did not remember that on PS4 when I originally played it.
Yeah, on PS5 it's like very, very vibrant. I love the customization of the colors for the ship and BD1.
Mm-hmm.
Those have been really fun. And like I'm rocking I got like, of course I bought like the physical edition, so I got like all the specialty like bonus items. So I'm rocking an orange lightsaber. I will say one thing I haven't really gotten the hang of, and I'm not sure I'm the biggest fan of, is the dual lightsaber, like dual-sided lightsaber style. It just does, like, I just haven't put enough time into it. I'm still trying to feel out the single-sided lightsaber combat. I like that there's an option pretty early on.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. Remember where in the game you're at right now?
So technically, this is what I did. I didn't follow the story exactly. I did go to Dathomir instead of
which plays into what I'm gonna mention here in a second.
So getting a double-ended lightsaber, I think I might have gotten it technically quote unquote early.
Yeah, so like you basically get it at a workbench.
Yeah.
And if you don't do the Dathomir stuff like you'll like there's pretty much a not missable workbench that you'll find eventually on Kashyyyk.
Mm.
that also plays into like you basically find it like between like a bit or like right before a big cinematic moment. So if you play it that way, getting the double bladed lightsaber there ends up kind of being like this 1-2 punch of like cool Star Warsy moments. But if you are a crazy completionist or whatever, and I did the same thing, even though I don't like these games, but like I was like, I'm gonna do all the side stuff I can do, and then I'm gonna go on the main quest kind of thing.
Well, I didn't want to miss
And
anything
so
on
yeah,
Dathomir.
exactly. So I did the same thing. I found that workbench on Dathomir. I was like, oh, cool. Okay, I've got this new thing. Neat. And then yeah, it was hearing people talk about the game after having played it and who didn't do the Dathomir stuff, where like that's the different thing, because it does kind of feel almost anticlimactic there. You just find it in a workbench, and a thing that clearly the game it gave you that option if you wanted to do it, but it does feel less special because you're just kind of finding it. Like it seems like it should have been like tied to a beat in the story or something like
I
that,
guess.
and so it ends up just being a weird little like
I, I
extra thing.
yeah, I didn't really take too much into it. I just thought, oh, cool. Like, oh, probably the first workbench you get out of New World,
Mhm.
you get the double-ended lightsaber, because it is kind of like a thing of him being like. One thing I do like about Cal is that one, he has a force power that is basically the touch empathy,
Mhm.
where he can feel the memories of the force on an item. Normally, that is I think I mentioned it on the episode that I recorded. That ability is like it's super extremely rare in like regular humans, but there is a race of aliens that have that ability innately, and that is like Quinlan Voss, Jedi Master Quinlan Voss, from the expanded universe, both pre and post Disney acquisition. That is like his people's thing.
Mhm.
I always thought personally, would have been really cool is if I think I've talked about this before with you. Is like I really would have liked it if they had kind of like inverted your expectations on in the sequel trilogy, inverting the kind of like expectations of the characters. So you have the Ray, who ends up being like ends up being like the Luke character, the Jedi character, um, the character that you think is going to be the Han character ends up, or sorry, not Han character, the character who starts off with an X-wing as the X-wing pilot and ends up becoming more of a general and commander, taking on kind of that Han role is
Poe.
Poe. Thank you. I was like, what? Where's the word that I'm looking for? Poe. And then I thought a really cool inversion would have been like if in the third movie, Finn discovers like where he's from, and it turns out he's actually the secret like princess character.
Okay.
And I would have thought, and in my mind, one of my favorite scenes ever in Star Wars in the sequel trilogy is when Finn picks up the helmet um, or no, when Finn gets like has the blood smeared across his stormtrooper mask.
Yeah.
I thought it would have been really cool if there like that had been a moment, and I'm like, man, they could have like really tied it into like also this other stuff, like this alien race, force sensitivity. So and like they really could have done something with that, and instead, we got what we got with Rise of Skywalker. So
All right, so let's bring it back to
bring
it back on the tracks to Jedi Fallen Order.
I've always been a big fan of that ability, and I've always thought it'd be really cool in a video game. And getting to see that has been pretty cool. Biggest complaint I have about the game, like absolutely the biggest complaint, is how contrived a lot of this narrative is. I mean,
I thought you were going to say loading times.
No,
That was the
loading
thing you were
times.
complaining about a lot.
Oh, you know what?
time.
Yeah, no, loading times by far the worst part of this game. Holy crap! On a PS5, I can't believe loading times are like this. I don't even want to imagine what they were like on the PS4.
I mean, you were making such a point of it while you were recording your first Let's Play, and I was just sitting right here, and I remember thinking to myself, like, I don't remember that being a thing, but it's also like it's been 3 years since over 3 years since I played it. It was basically like it came out right after we launched that nerdy site.
Yeah.
My distinct memories, as I've talked about with you, are I went out to San Francisco for what should have been a work conference, but I'd been let go. But they still sent me out for that conference. But I got to see our friends over at Kind of Funny, got to do Kind of Funny Games Daily, and then the rest of that week was spent largely in my hotel room with a TV I bought from Target and played Jedi Fallen Order on, because I took my PS4 PS4, but it couldn't connect to like the hotel room's TV. So I just bought a TV and then took it back at the end of the week, kind of thing, and played through like the entire game just in that hotel room, really. And yeah, like I'm sure they were bad load times, and I probably died a lot because it's that kind of game. But it 3 years later, I didn't remember that being the thing I remember about that game. So,
Well, I almost didn't even remember it, and I bitch and complain about it all
yeah,
the time.
yeah.
So
And I think it's also like it's another one of those things that like stands in stark comparison. Even the PS5 version is still probably, like how much of an update did they really put into the PS5 version, and compare it to something like Elden Ring, where it is, yeah, you die and you're back in the game pretty quickly. Like that's one of the things that has made me not hate Elden Ring as much as like I did Bloodborne or
Mhm.
Sekiro when I tried those games, because it is like you die and that loading screen is more just, all right, this is the extra time I get to sit with this failure before the game lets me do something fun again.
Yeah, the quick refresh that you get going right back into the game in Elden Ring is one of the best parts of it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I will say, like, but yeah, as far as like
contrived story beats, got
yeah, like it's so weird because like the weirdest part about it is like they call out, like it's like so on like this, it's so on the nose of how like contrived some of these story beats are that even the characters are calling it out and been like, I know normally you don't trust people, but you gotta trust me. Well, I don't normally trust people. I'll trust you, I guess. It's like, okay, know what? Fine. Next planet, take me. Let me swing lightsaber around and do stuff, please and thank you.
I don't think that's the characters calling it out so much as bad writing, but it's I also don't remember the like it's been
I no,
years
it is
since I
bad.
played it.
Don't get me wrong, it is bad writing, but I mean, it's so on the note. Like
But
it's so.
I'll also say, it's that was kind of early Star Wars bread and butter anyway. Was not great writing, especially prequels. George Lucas, not a great writer.
Oh yeah, no. It's like, don't get me wrong, this is not the worst thing that's ever been written in Star Wars. That's Attack of the Clones. No, it's not the worst thing that's ever happened, but it's like it's very much like, hey, we thought of these really cool planets with these really cool environments, and you're going around doing like Jedi, like you're going around doing like Jedi exploration stuff, and you're in the Star Wars universe, and it's fun and it's cool. And it's like, yeah, and it's like, oh, and we need a reason for you to be there. And one of the worst things about it is, I have no idea. Like, first off, they like the whole crux of the game is like there's a holocron with Force sensitive children on it, and they're like, we can rebuild the Order with this. And it's like, cool. How long ago was this holocron put in here? Because it feels like it was a while ago. How old? Like, none of these are children anymore at this point. They're at the like the youngest is probably early teens at this point. Like this holocron's been in there for, like, judging from everything, at least a decade.
I mean, I'll throw those out there because Logan's not here to do it. That's just Star Wars not doing time well.
Yeah, it's bad. Like, it's just like, oh, we have to, like, because we can rebuild the Order with this. It's like, you're gonna go up to like a mechanic on some, like, on Nar Shaddaa and be like, hey, I found your name on a holocron. You're Force sensitive. Let me train you to become a Jedi. And it's and he's like, dude, I'm married with kids.
I mean, the thing is, like, they know also, and they're just in hiding. So it's about, like, this is how you can, like, find them and bring them back together kind of thing. But it's also that thing of, well, we've all seen A New Hope. We know that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
so
that's fair. That's fair.
So how do we get from this point to that point, basically?
Yeah.
And that's what the game is going to be.
That's what the game's about. Yeah. I'm just like, the way I was going through, I was like, we can rebuild I was like, some of those people are probably, like, married with kids at this point.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, he finds him, he's like, I need to become a Jedi. It's like some beer-bellied, like, mechanic on Nar Shaddaa just being like, dude, like, I got alimony I gotta pay. Like, I don't know I can't go join it.
You are really hung up on this, like, this character on Nar Shaddaa that is.
I literally just made him up, and he's already a better written character than half the characters in this game.
No, he's not.
No, he's not.
He just said all I know about him is he's a mechanic and he's married and has alimony.
No, he's divorced. He's been married, he's had kids, and now he's divorced.
Yeah,
and now he's got to pay out.
Yeah,
it was those go-go.
That doesn't make him a good character or anything like that. So
the reason why his marriage broke down is because he couldn't stop visiting the hut barges in Nar Shaddaa.
Why do I let you go down these dumb tangents anyway. Like, you already find enough tangents on your own, and I try and keep the show on the rails, and then I help feed into stupid ones like this one.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway,
combat. How you liking
it's
the
awesome.
combat? I know, I don't remember. I don't think it's in the first episode. The frog, right?
Frog. No, Frog's in
the
the
first
second
planet.
episode.
Okay, yeah. I remember watching you or listening to you try and just fight and fight and fight that frog many a time.
That I was super.
Stay tuned for that
Yeah.
if you get into the series.
There might be some like Benny Hill edits to that.
There you go. Have some fun with that. Yeah.
Yeah. No. There is a. I really like the combat. The combat feels great. I think it only gets better as you upgrade it and get more abilities, which is what you want out of this type of a game. I think that it does a great job of keeping the kind of like slowed down, focused, committed combat that you expect out of a Soulsborne game, but with a skill set and like abilities that you'd want out of a game where you're playing as a Jedi. I just think that it just balances it super well. And like there's so much care put into this game on so many levels. And so the story is very much like it doesn't even rank secondary, I feel. And like the importance of like clearly where the investment was put into this game. This game was created to make you feel like you're a Jedi, and it succeeds in doing it.
One of the things I'm curious about, because I remember the game had it, and I remember I didn't pay any attention to it, but it definitely seems like the kind of thing you would pay a shit ton of attention to is the codex. You mentioned using that force ability kind of thing. Have you been checking out the codex and like learning all the like the backstory of all the little things you're finding on the planets?
Trevor, let me tell you about this dad on this planet. All right.
No, you don't need to.
He's dead.
I mean, yeah, a lot of the planets you go to, there's a lot of dead people.
Yeah. No, it's like, it's the way that they're doing it where it's just like, I like, once again, I'm loving how modern Star Wars is really heavily emphasizing the like fascist aspects of the Empire that we never really get into because the rise of the Empire and kind of like its establishment was not previously well documented in Star Wars canon. Prior to the Disney acquisition, that is something that I think Disney's done a fantastic job with, being like, hey, Empire, they're Nazis. If it wasn't clear before, it's going to be very clear now. I think Andor does a phenomenal job of basically just being like ACAB, like fuck fascists, fuck Nazis, like hit them where it hurts. Let's go, motherfucker. Like this continues to kind of like nail that of being like, yeah, the Empire. It's like before it was like, well, the Empire was so bad they blew up a planet. It's like, yeah, and it's like, but there also have been like the whole beginning part of it is like your like Cal's friend is basically just does like a union speech about how like they're like we're engineers, like we're educated people, and they're making us scrappers, and it's messed up, and it's just like, yeah, I'm like this guy. Before I was like, okay, maybe he's gonna turn me in, maybe he won't, I don't know, but it's fine. And then it's like I trust him, and then right afterwards he goes, Jedi, yeah, you know what about Jedi? Forget about the Jedi. Let's talk about these union-based issues. We are engineers. We are educated people, and we have been reduced to being scrappers. And like we are being like in like their boot is on our neck, and it's just like, yeah. And then it turns out the Inquisition's more union busting at that point. And then Cal apparently has also just been like I'm a Jedi in hiding. I carry my giant long-handled lightsaber with me all the time.
I mean, if something pops off, you need to have it there ready to go.
Yeah, but it's just like there's one thing where it's like Ezra Bridger in Rebels being like it looks like I actually have it designed. Like a pistol. It's like a blaster.
Yeah.
And it's like that's smart. I like that. It's like you can carry this around and nobody's gonna think twice.
Compared to the janky piece of shit that Cal has. Yeah.
I mean, granted, one end is like burnt off.
Yeah.
Which is like it's something. No, but I like that it's a longer, like one thing I liked about it is like, oh yeah, it's supposed to be like a dual-sided lightsaber in length. Mm-hmm. But I love the like length that the handle has for the single-bladed lightsaber. That just feels like that's always been like what I like. If you look at my lightsaber that I own, it is like I want the Rancor tooth. I want this longer handle because I like that as far as like some consistency of weight. Mm-hmm. Something like it's physical and it's like there is something real about it. And I like that is also like part of his fighting style is he has this longer handed lightsaber. And so like when I've done like these like swoop slashes to like dash slash, holding down triangle, so you swoop up and do an uppercut on them with a lightsaber. There's the whole thing of like he drops the lightsaber down to its lower point and then like brings it up, and it's like that's great. There's a lot of like there's so many key things that I've noticed about the combat in this game and about like the movement and ability and the like area level designs that are just really really smart and brilliant that I've really enjoyed.
What do you think about the map?
Could be better.
Yeah,
could be better.
and especially if you try and like start going into like 100%ing areas and stuff like
Hell
that.
no, that sounds
a big
awful.
old pain in the ass.
That sounds awful.
Platinum, that's it. You have to do it for the platinum. So that's why I know
this isn't a platinum playthrough. This is just
yeah.
No, I do like it. I have really found it, and also I hated leaving Dathomir without finding the seed for my terrarium.
Yep.
My terrarium needs to have the seeds so it can grow the plants, so I can be like, look at my plants.
Yep. That was the terrarium was actually the last trophy I ended up getting, because like they take in-game time to grow and stuff, and there's one that is like, all right, get your whole terrarium built, and so I had to just kind of like run around a planet for a while after I'd done everything else in the game. So yeah, woo. Any final thoughts on Jedi Fallen Order before we move on?
Good so far.
Good so far. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I remember enjoying it. I don't remember where I ended up putting it that year. Wasn't number one. That was Fire Emblem Three Houses, but yeah, I mean, it's. I'm sure it was in my top 10.
Yeah, Fire Emblem 3 House. That game's fucking rules so fucking hard.
Yeah. Well, moving on to what I've been playing, in addition to our Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild stuff that we talked about last week, I picked up and have started playing Theatrhythm Final Bar Line. This is the PlayStation and Nintendo Switch latest Theatrhythm game, which is basically like the rhythm game, but with Final Fantasy music. Let's see, I have the game box right here. It has 385 carefully selected music tracks from across the whole Final Fantasy series. And it is interesting because like there are things from like Final Fantasy Mystic Quest in there, which I feel like is like a Super Nintendo game that like I played a lot because it was like my era.
I thought that was on the Game Boy.
No. Those are the Final Fantasy Legends or Final Fantasy
right.
Saga games. Those, I believe, are DLC. You can get like an extra pack of those. But yeah, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest was like the. It's always described as like the Final Fantasy for a Western audience because it's way simplified. It's way easier kind of stuff. And it basically came out in the era of Final Fantasy 2 and 3 or 4 and 6 over here. And it was like it was our watered down kind of game. But yeah, like that has, some songs in there. I mentioned to you like the Final Fantasy 14 series quest is like 30 some odd songs, whereas most of the games have like between 10 and 20 usually. The shortest one I've done was Final Fantasy X-2, which I think was just 6 songs.
But those songs slap.
I mean, like part of it is like a lot of the music in Final Fantasy X-2 is just music from Final Fantasy X. But yeah, there are very odd omissions, and I realized after the fact that is because they're not omissions. It's they threw them into like the digital deluxe edition or something like that. Like To Xanarkin from Final Fantasy X, not in the base game. Like you have to buy extra stuff if you want to get it and stuff like. And so it's like that's weird.
Did you buy it?
I've not yet. It's on my maybe I'll do it, or maybe I'll wait until it's on a sale kind of thing. Because there's also like 3 season passes, and like the Final Fantasy like Game Boy Legends and Saga games and stuff like that. Those are part of like the season pass, as is like Live Alive, and I imagine Series 2 will be like Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross music or something. Like it'll like they're Final Fantasy adjacent kinds of things. But yeah, like Live Alive has nothing to do with Final Fantasy, but Square Enix, so they did a pack there.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's I appreciate that like I've been largely playing on like the basic difficulty level because I don't do a ton of rhythm games, and it's weird. I talked about this a little bit before we were recording. Like, I spent many years drumming. I was a drummer in middle school, high school, um, and I always feel like I should be better at rhythm games. And I'm like, part of it is maybe I just wasn't a good drummer and didn't keep time well. I don't know, but like I
I feel like somebody
definitely
would have told you.
yeah, I feel like it would have come up at some point, um, but yeah, like and it's also very simple. At least playing on like PlayStation, it's you're pushing a button and you're like moving the analog sticks kind of thing. But they'll like I'm playing the basic one, so it's like the very easiest version of things. And like a couple of things will be like, all right, for this challenge, clear the stage on the higher up difficulty or something like that. And I'll try it, and it throws a whole bunch of like little tricks and things. Where like,
Yeah.
okay, now you gotta like push one and then like do an analog,
Okay, I have to
different
ask.
times and
I
stuff like
have
that.
no idea how the
Or
controls
not
in this
not
game
analog
work.
sticks, sorry. The Joy-Con or the joysticks. It's basically like
Is it one button? You just have to hit one button,
it's
or
yeah, it's so there are like touch thing no, that like I think they use the terminology touch. There's basically like if it's a red icon, you're pushing a button, and that can be like the circle, square, triangle. It can be any of those buttons, or it can be one of the triggers kind of thing. And it's basically like you push that button. If it's green, you're like pushing and holding. And if it's a green like that kind of does like a little wavy line, you have to move the joystick up to follow the line. Like you have to move, if the thing goes up and then down, you kind of like hold and move the joystick up and down to kind of like follow it's like follow the bouncing ball basically, but less bouncing ball. And then there will be like a gold trigger that is an arrow pointing up or two arrows pointing up. And if it's one arrow pointing up, you have to like flick one of the joysticks up on the beat. If it's two arrows pointing up, you have to flick them both up. If it's like one's pointing left, one's pointing right, you do that kind of thing. And so yeah, it's and the more difficult the game gets, the more different random permutations of those kinds of things you get. It's a lot more intuitive, and the game does a good job of kind of like tutorializing that stuff, but it can be very like tricky and very convoluted very quickly. Meanwhile, while all of like that's the thing you're doing that you're controlling, you also have a party of four characters that are going through these stages while you're doing all of that stuff. They're fighting little enemies as you go, and they basically like they're pretty much on autopilot. You can set up your party with you can set up each character with three abilities that they get as they level up over by doing more and more stuff. And so they're going through and they're fighting these enemies. And if you get like, there will be like prompts where if you hit, a critical prompt at the right time, they'll get like an extra attack or something like that, or they'll move faster through the level or something like that. So you can kind of like help them out a little bit, but a lot of it is you've kind of set them on their path, and very little of what you do and what you're doing to just get through the song are going to change how it plays out for them. So yeah, that's like the other element that's going on, and each level will have like its own kind of like extra challenge. So it'll be like, okay, beat this level using 5 or more abilities, which your characters will do after so many button prompts or whatever, or there will be abilities that trigger only on a boss or something like that. Or another challenge might be complete this level with 75% or higher good ratings kind of thing. Because it being a rhythm game, each like prompt you hit, you're getting like a bad, a good, a great, a critical, or like a rainbow critical where you basically nailed it like spot on. And so you're trying to just kind of clear those levels. The joy for me is just the music.
Yeah.
It's like I'm playing deliberately most of these things on basic, the easiest level, just because I'm like I don't care that much. It's just fun going through these songs and getting to hear the one I've played the most actually, very fresh in my mind because it's the end song from Crisis Core, having played that not too long ago. It's a nice little like on the beat kind of tune, and it's also just like heartbreaking and stuff like that. Um, you're getting at, like, as you're leveling up and stuff, your characters are getting new abilities. You're collecting items and stuff that are giving you boosts or can't give you boosts. You can get like new spells that you can assign your characters, and pretty much yeah, you're like I'm going through the series quest stuff where it's you know the game kind of gives you like one key to unlock a series at the beginning, and it's like you can pick from like 5 or 6 of the different games across the series, and then like usually around like after the 4th or 5th fight on a series, you
Mhm.
unlock a key so you can go and unlock the next thing. I've just been pretty much playing through chronologically at this point, and I think as of now, I think I'm basically in Final Fantasy 11 right now. Or no, I just finished Final Fantasy 11, so I am about to go through Final Fantasy 12 stuff. Is kind of where I'm at in the series, and then even outside of that, so like once I get to Final Fantasy 15, then it's got Final Fantasy Chocobo Mystery Dungeon, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. Like there are a whole bunch of like the spin-off side things as well that you can kind of get some music from, do some extra stuff there. So yeah, it's definitely a like this is a fun mindless kind of thing to do. Like I I can see an end of the year where this is in my top 10. I can also see an end of the year where it doesn't make the cut. Um, uh, it's not like a bad game by any means, but it's also a very simple kind of game, and it's largely it's scratching the right itch for me, especially as we're going to go to a Distant Worlds concert in a couple weeks time.
Yeah,
It's like definitely preparing me for that, and I'll be like, oh, a lot of these songs are way more familiar because I have been enjoying this.
I'm
So
really excited to go to that concert.
yeah, gonna
One,
be
I have not ever like been to like just like a proper symphony concert before.
hmm.
So I'm excited to do that. Excited to dress a little fancy.
There you
Go out to Phoenix, have a night in town. No, I don't know how I did that voice, but I did it.
go. Yep, that's the thing you did.
I did a thing.
Yeah, I have been to a Distant Worlds concert before. It's also like a couple of the songs like I really like, in particular like Final Fantasy VI being my favorite Final Fantasy. Like I remember I wanted Locke's theme to be in there, and it's not part of like the series main, but like when you complete the series quest, you might unlock a couple extra songs from whatever game it is, and that was one of the ones that unlocked after the fact. So I was like, okay, well now I can just go to the choose whatever song you want to play level, and play it there. So I was like, cool, I got to do that at least. But yeah, it's a great mix of like the classic pixel and 8-bit kind of styles, and then also the full-blown orchestrations that we have now. Like Final Fantasy 7 is clearly the one that they've probably given the most love to, outside of like the Final Fantasy 14 has 30 some odd games, because Final Fantasy 7 has an entry for the original game, then it has Final Fantasy 7 series, which is like Advent Children on top of that, or and other things. Like it says Final Fantasy 7 series, so I feel like it's gotta be including Dirge Cerberus, but I don't think there were any Dirge Cerberus things.
That's a shame. Dirge Cerberus has a couple of good songs.
Sure. And then there's also a third one for Final Fantasy 7 Remake, has its own like track list. And so yeah, it's great getting to just kind of spend time with that. Like each series unlocks a couple characters from that game. And then even there are some omissions. Like Final Fantasy 10, you only unlock Tidus, Yuna, and Auron. Like no Waka, no Lulu, no Kamari, no Riku, but you can get Riku in 10 too. And so it's just like, and then once you finish a series, you typically unlock like the boss enemies. So like when you finished Final Fantasy 10, you unlock Seymour and Jecht.
Okay.
Or like yeah, if, Final Fantasy 4, you unlock Golbez at the end. Final Fantasy 6, you unlock Kefka. Those like Sephiroth at the end of Final Fantasy 7, obviously. So that's fun, and yeah, it's just kind of like you pick your party. Like each that's another thing. Like each of the characters has like they kind of fall into their own like camps. Like there's the physical attacker type. There's the magic type. There's the healer. There's the support. There's the summoner. There's the hunter, which is good for like getting items and summon stones and stuff like that. Because you also have like summons that are giving you little bonuses, as well as like the one I'm always using is basically has like a 30% XP boost. So my characters are all leveling up quicker. And during combat, once you've, done a certain amount of things, the summon will go off and attack the enemies on the screen, kind of thing as well. So, yeah, it's mostly the music. The thing that always gets me when I'm playing these games is like I'm so focused on a very small part of the screen real estate, because that's where the button prompts are, that I'm never paying attention to what's going on in the background or what the little characters are doing and their fight and all that stuff, which makes me glad. Like, I feel like I remember in games in versions past, like this was all happening with like the scenes from the game playing out or something like that. This is much more like your characters are on a journey fighting, through the countryside or whatever. It's a generic thing, usually, some kind of reminiscent of whatever game they're supposed to be pulling from or whatever scene they're pulling from or something like that. So, it might be a plains, or it might be, the cityscape, might be Midgar or something like that. But your characters are just kind of like walking along and doing the fights, or they're standing in place and the fights are coming to them. But like, I appreciate that it's not, okay, I'm not having to, play hit all the tracks in time with the music while all of the craziness of the gold saucer FMV video is playing in the background or something and distracting me. So yeah, that's a whole other element of the game. But yeah, I'm gonna just keep chipping away and enjoying more and more songs. And yeah, I'm having a fun little time with it. So shout out to Theatrhythm Final Bar Line, which I think is actually like the first new game that I'm playing here in 2023. It's very odd that we've made it to March before I really got the first one under my belt. But yeah, any questions or any final thoughts there from me?
No, I think you covered everything I wanted to know,
Cool.
which is mostly how the hell does this game play?
Yeah.
Because nothing from anything I've seen, like in people's like screenshots and stuff, has told me anything out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I was really hoping more for something more like Persona 4 Dancing All Night type of like a.
I mean, I would say that is probably one of the best comparisons I could give it, is Persona 4 Dancing All Night. But instead of playing that on your Vita, you're playing it on a Switch or a PS4 /5. And so instead of like, the like in Persona 4 Dancing All Night, it's like, okay, up, left, and down, or triangle, circle, cross, or X. Here it's any button and your joysticks, but it's the same kind of thing. It's okay, you're either holding a button or you're tapping a button, or you're flicking a stick to go in a right direction or something like that. So yeah, I mean, I would say the Persona Dancing All the games are a pretty good comparison here. Good. But then there's like this extra element of, okay, and you were also going to have your characters fighting little animated baddies.
Well, to be fair, Persona 4 Dancing All Night does how you fight baddies, but it's with dancing, because you can't use violence in dancing.
Sure. You don't see any baddies in the game though, so it's...
Yeah, you do. You do the to defeat the shadows of
your stuff
the
is
stage.
Just your dancing. That is what you're looking at the entire time in those games.
Yeah, the characters are dancing, and by dancing they do their thing, and then that helps them beat the baddie.
That's fine. You don't see baddies in the game, is what I'm saying. Like they're not on the dance floor or anything with you. It's
no.
Your character's doing
the
dance.
Stage you're on is like the bad guy that you're fighting.
Sure. Yeah.
In that game.
Anyway. Okay, well, let us go ahead and switch over and wrap up here with The Last of Us. This episode was titled "When We Are in Need." As I think we did last week, we'll kind of do pretty much a full spoilers on this. So if you aren't caught up or aren't interested, feel free to bounce here. Thank you for joining us. But yeah, let's wrap up with our latest Last of Us thoughts here, Cameron. Cool. Yeah, we're fresh off of finishing up this episode. What did you think?
This show's so damn
good. Yeah.
It's so damn good. Bella Ramsey, they are just such a tour de force of acting and what they bring to the table and everything they do. This episode is largely dominated by them, as was the last episode. really puts Ellie as a character in much more of the spotlight, like the game does. And so the successful transition of moving character focused from Joel to Ellie almost exclusively for these 2 episodes is done incredibly well. One thing I would have liked a little bit more was less of the like Joel's tactic of getting the 2 people to coincide with the thing. I would have liked it to have been more of the violent aspect of when he wait, is it 1-to-1 that they do in the game to the show in that moment?
Pretty much, yeah.
Why did I think there was something different?
So that's what, like you're.
Oh,
you're
no, never mind. You're right.
Yeah,
Right.
no, it's.
I'm more. My memory and my emphasis was Joel beat the guy to death, getting that info out of him. Then I just remembered that no, that does happen. It's been a long time since I played the first game.
Yeah, no, it's pretty much it. That scene was pretty much lifted wholly from the game. Of all right, there's one guy tied up in a chair and the other guy tied up behind him. And he does that threat of like, all right, tell me, and it better be the same place he points to, and like, yeah, I'm gonna pop your kneecap off, like, and then just kills him and says, why'd you do that? You know, like he told you what he wanted. Oh no, I believe him.
Yeah.
Like, and then just goes to town on him with the bat. Like this is
pipe, the metal,
the pipe.
Him picking up the pipe. I was like, they are doing the pipe scene. Yay!
Yeah. No, this was very much. And it was interesting. I didn't know if we were going to get it because they kind of did that tease of it back with the Native American couple a couple episodes back.
See, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's why I thought I was like, oh, okay, but
yeah, no, they went full into it here, and yeah, it was like this episode is like I think. I don't. Yeah, I mean, it's got like I feel like it is very clearly the most violent of the episodes.
Definitely, and oh my god,
both from Joel's and Ellie's perspectives here. Yeah,
and not just physical violence, but like emotional violence as well.
Yeah.
The elevation that I should have looked up his name. He plays David.
Scott Shepherd.
The elevation that Scott Shepherd does for David's character. One, they do such a great job of setting him up as a, because you don't have the waves of zombies fighting through them with David and like building that camaraderie. Instead, how do we show a loving, caring, like a committed, caring side of David? And so they do that by showing us how he interacts with the community and that whole thing. And when he's grieved, like the episode opens with him like, you know, basically presiding over the funeral for a child's father kind of thing. And I had that fun moment where I just kind of blurted out while we were watching, oh, that guy's going to be the guy that Joel killed a couple episodes ago. And sure enough, that's exactly how it paid off. Yep. And I was like, oh, that's so smart.
That was a great translation. And yeah, because we also get that great scene between David and Ellie, though everything happens for a reason scene, where in the game it's some of our crew were over there at the university and they got taken out by a crazy man and who's traveling with a little girl, and we pretty much get that exact same thing but translated for the circumstances here of the show. Like
I have she's not much older than you, and you know she lost her father to a wild and crazy man, like that whole thing. And then the way that it's done is just so brilliant. It's so brilliantly done. It's transitioned so well, and David is far, far worse, I feel, in the show than he is in the game, because I realized why. In the game, it is a video game. I shouldn't have said it that way. Like, it's a video game, so it's not real life. David being like a fictional character in a video game, you're not actually seeing a person say those things and do those things. You're seeing a character model of it.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much more creepy awfulness to seeing a person do and say the things that he does.
Yeah.
There is no veil of, oh, I know this voice actor, and there's no getting taking what he's saying off on quote unquote the best note possible. He does such a Scott Shepherd, right?
Yeah.
Scott Shepherd does such a great way of bringing the gravity to certain lines that are so damn good. And one of the lines they added for the show is, "You have a violent heart,"
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like, "Fuck, this is so good. It's so good." And it's such a great payoff to when Ellie gets bitten in the previous episode. She doesn't get sad or like like her reaction is to get violent, to be angry, get frustrated, and to lash out. And you compare that to Riley's reaction, which is some probably more of a like more common reaction that you'd expect. And it's like it shows like the difference between the two of them, but it also I think this feeds back into it and like is definitely mind fucking with Ellie with the line, "You have a violent heart," and it's such a good line. It's such a good wordsmithing.
It's I mean, yeah, it strikes me as like, oh, he like obviously, you know, he says in the episode like he sees himself in her, and it is like, oh yeah, like these two characters are more alike than than certainly Ellie would want to admit. And yeah, he's putting on this facade, David is, to his community. Not like for a little while I was like, they're definitely still doing the like eating people bit here, yeah, and then
they save that. They
yeah.
do such a great job. If you do not know that that's coming, they do such a great job, because when it's like, what meat is that? Venison, and then you're like, oh, because if you're unaware of it that they're cannibals, then you think, oh, David got back and they cut down and dressed the deer down and it's fine, and then they bring in the deer,
yeah,
and you're like,
but like even before that,
with
they say like when shout out to Troy Baker's James, of course,
yeah.
But he's like, they're talking about like, what do we have rations wise left? We still have some deer, elk, venison, like so they have like some, and you know, like we know now in retrospect that that's code kind of stuff, but it's still like, if you're brand new to this, okay, they have something, so sure, it's venison.
When you see them hung up and you realize, oh, that's deer, that's elk, that's venison. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
That's kind of how I took it, because there's 3 bodies hanging up there. I think it's fantastic. I think the way that they do that is fantastic. I think the reveals are perfect. Ellie looking down and like the camera pans, like goes to David, and then he looks down and the camera pans down and there's like just ear, loose ear, and he goes,
"I would have told you. Only a few people know." Yeah.
Like just that perfect. Also, I pointed out I never realized that David was a teacher before the apocalypse, and so he was probably a creepy, lusty teacher.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a thing in the game. I think that was another thing added here for the show. So
probably, but I think that's fantastic. I think that is, he's somebody who would want to, like, 'cause you can tell he likes having vulnerable people like under his thumb.
Yeah,
and that makes, and like, so kids in like freshman high school, like like what a monster. They completely nailed David being just a monster, and the fact that he points out that they're alike, and it's more than any of us would like to admit that it's true, but it's true.
Yeah,
and it just like, it's so good the way that they produce it, the way that the scenes go about, the sit down at the shout out to the sawmill still showing up. All of it, focusing on like some of the dead animal stuff, I thought was like brilliant. Like when it's just like that scene transition and it's the dead deer's face.
Yeah.
And it's like perfect. Like the way that this episode is shot, that covers the bleakness and they say it in the after thing, but the deprivation of the emotional toll that this world has. And now we're in winter. It's bleak. It's deprivation is a key central element that they're playing off of, and they do such a brilliant job with it. Also, I don't know if that's how penicillin works.
Yeah, no, I imagine not, but it's what Ellie figured out, and it did the trick. So sure. I love that. I love the little bits of backstory that we get where David and his flock came from the Pittsburgh QZ.
Yep. Shout out to Pittsburgh.
So yeah, we still get Pittsburgh, even if we went to Kansas City instead here. And Pittsburgh still has fallen some 6 years ago, I guess, in the timeline of the show. Yeah, I like so many great little details there. And we hear it ends up being the deer that Ellie finds, but like we hear the clicker, and I was like,
yeah,
like, oh, are we going to see infected in this episode? Because in the game, there is that like the standoff that Ellie and David have that kind of like gets her to trust him at least enough. And we don't get that. And so I found myself thinking, like, a couple weeks ago, I was like, are there going to be any like big infected sequences the rest of the season? Because
No, I don't
like
think so.
realistically, I think that the things that they would be focusing on are all going to be human centric stories. So it'd be interesting to see if any pop up here in the finale, or if the people who tuned in for a zombie show are going to keep getting mad that there aren't zombies in the zombie show. It's like, that's not the point. Stop calling it a zombie show. It's The Last of Us. It's about us.
Yeah, it's
not the zombies.
the whole point is zombies are a commentary about society, and like,
Yeah.
One of my favorite things is it was an After Hours, which is a crack.com like YouTube short, or not shorts, but like YouTube video series that they did, where it's basically like four of the cracked writers would sit down at a table at like a diner, and it was written by like with other people as well, but basically it was just these like basic arguments that they propose and put out there. And one of the best ones that they did was when they talked about horror stories, and they're like, the big horror stories of the era that you're in are a reflection of the kind of quote unquote sins of the era that you're in. The sins, like the idea of the horror behind vampires, and is the idea of like the fear of aristocracy. You have ghosts and other things that are like the fears of the past, of like old things coming back to haunt you. And then you have zombies, which are a fear of the now. It is the fear of the, like, it's one thing, it's like consumerism, like George, I think it's George Romero is the director, who did The Living Dead. There's a massive commentary about zombies within, and like what makes zombies scary isn't that they are going to tear you apart. It's that they work off of a deeper level of the fear we have of other people. And so the idea of like in quote unquote infected, it's this thing that people can't control once it happens to them. And it's like there's multi levels of the fear that goes on it. And I think The Last of Us does such a great job of highlighting that the danger doesn't necessarily come from the thing that's ruining the world. It comes from the people who react to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that will always be more interesting than the thing that's happening to the world.
Yeah.
Because what happens to the world is never as important as how we react to it. So Last of Us, I think, captures that brilliantly. And like, yeah, I just think that it's awesome. I think that the way that they're doing it is great. It's also Pedro Pascal, like, so damn good. So damn good. One of the things I love that they've mentioned in the after it is like I was like, oh yeah, I guess like if you are watching this for the first time, you expect Joel to bust in and do the big damn hero moment.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't, because that's not how, like, we knew that was not how that goes.
Yeah.
But it's definitely Joel, like, definitely that's how it is. And so, but what I liked is how, I think it was Chris Metzen who said,
Craig Mazin.
Craig Mazin, who said, Joel comes in not to save her. He comes in and saves her emotionally.
Yeah. She
is about to fall apart, and he's there to catch her.
Yeah.
And I like that so much, because it's not the strong male paternal figure is not often the character that becomes the emotional comfort in a story. Oftentimes that's left to a female character to be the emotional comfort, to be the warmth and the absorption that you have in creating catharsis for a character. Their approach of having it be Joel, and also having this be the moment that Joel and Ellie fully accept each other as like they are the parental child figure, when he calls her baby girl and takes her into his arms, because that's the only way he knows how to comfort her. But it's also what she needs at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting. And obviously next week in the finale.
Oh, I'm so excited. Trevor, I'm so excited for this episode.
I mean, yeah, we get in the game, we basically leave this and Ellie is distant and Joel's trying to open her up and she doesn't open up. And so I'll be interested to see how that element plays out at the beginning of the next episode.
I will say the way that they handled that one line of like, you have a violent heart, that I think is probably like, that is such a, not only is it like brilliantly written and how it like reflects the two characters, that is also a line that I think is like such a great knife, like a knife in a wound that is going to be left there. because Ellie's just going to keep carrying it
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is, I feel, as far as character stuff goes, definitely not in how it would be in real life at all. But I think that will linger far longer than anything else that happened.
I mean, especially given how we know where that character goes over the course of not only the rest of the story, but the next game. Yeah, like she has a violent heart, and that will, like, David reads her perfectly.
Because that's what he does. David reads people. Because he calls it out. He's like, you read people. You have an insight into that. I see the people the same way. Like, and then it's just like, how do you react to it? And she reacts to it by having a violent heart, just like he does. And I'm like, also shout out to her using the infected thing as as a way of putting division between them.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, yeah, even that's lifted straight from the game.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but it's just like, I fucking love that as like a story beat of like, well, there's no way she can get out. I'm infected. Yep. And it's like, and like David immediately sees through the bullshit because he's like, there's no way that this would have healed this fast. Yeah, like,
you are you just that fucking special? Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, more than you know, buddy. Yeah. But you're not gonna live to see the tale.
Nope. Troy, shout out to Troy, just getting his like when he did his after the episode when they had him, and he's like, oh, it's so fucking awesome that I get like nailed in the neck and just like spurting blood everywhere. It's like, man, Troy, I fucking love Troy Baker. Yeah, such a great.
I still think it would have been fun if he had been one of the ones that Joel tortured.
Yes, same.
Like, that would have been a fun like meta moment of Joel v. Joel. But you know, he obviously gets a meteor role as kind of the henchman sidekick James. So,
which is like a legitimate role, not created just for the show. That's a named character in the game.
Indeed. Can't wait for the next week's episode, the finale. And then it's going to be a long wait until we get season 2. So, whamp whamp. All right. Well, I think that will do it for this week's episode. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to discuss all these fun little things. Let's go around the metaphorical table with any plugs we have. You can follow Cameron at RevCabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. What do you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
My Let's Play series. Go watch me play Jedi Fallen Order. Jafo. It's a good time.
Indeed. Don't know necessarily what the schedule on that one will be.
We'll see.
But we're putting out this first episode here to coincide with this. We have Wednesdays as currently an opening, but yeah, we also have follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. You can follow our other Let's Play series that we have going on right now. We're just a full run of shows this year, because you can watch Cam and I play Elden Ring on Tuesdays, or you can watch me replaying Breath of the Wild on Thursdays. So yeah, we got some Jedi Fallen Order, we got some Elden Ring, we got some Breath of the Wild. 2 of those in lead up to kind of their sequels here, and Elden Ring now in the lead up to DLC. We'll see whenever that comes out. So yeah, go check out all of our Let's Plays over there on youtube.com/thatnerdysite. And also go check out that D Plus show. We're going to be doing for the next month and change. We're going to be doing the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, starting this week with Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl. So stay tuned for that as well. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, ring notification bells, all those good fun things. Thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.